The stars stretched endlessly beyond the glass of the command bridge, a sea of quiet fire. Commander Elias Rane stood alone, his eyes fixed on the glowing edge of the nebula that marked the border between human space and the galactic conquered. For him, this silence was peace. For the galaxy, it was a warning. The ship he commanded, HSS Valiant, was a human warship, old but sturdy, built with iron, sweat, and the kind of stubbornness that humans were famous for. Its engines groaned like an old beast that refused to die. Its crew loved it because it was human, imperfect, loud, unpredictable, and alive. Elias took a deep breath, his hands behind his back. The faint hum of the Valiant's reactor was comforting. To others, it was noise. To him, it was home. He had fought many battles for humanity, and not all of them with weapons. The Galactic Conquered, an alliance of hundreds of alien species, ruled the stars with strict logic and cold order. Humans had joined reluctantly, forced to adapt or be erased. Their emotions were mocked, their art dismissed, and their irrational courage labeled as primitive. Yet time and again humanity survived even when reason said they should not. Today Elias was not facing a battle of ships, but one of hearts and politics. A conquered observer was coming aboard, a representative from a world that thought emotions were weakness. He sighed. "They'll never understand us," he whispered to himself. The doors behind him slid open with a soft hiss. His first officer, Lieutenant Harper, entered. "Sir, the observer ship has docked. She's on her way to the bridge." "She?" Elias asked, turning slightly. Harper nodded, handing him a data pad. "Saris Valen, Conquered Intelligence. Species Altharian. Background Logic Caste, rank equivalent to Commander." Elias read the summary. Altharians were tall, silver-skinned beings with crystalline eyes and neural lattices that processed information faster than any human supercomputer. They spoke little, felt little, and trusted only facts. He frowned slightly. "A Logic Caste officer on my ship, wonderful." Harper grinned. "Maybe she'll learn what human chaos looks like up close." Elias gave a dry smile. "Or maybe I'll get another report calling me reckless and emotionally unstable." The doors hissed again. The air seemed to grow colder as Saris Valen entered the bridge. She was graceful and still, her silver skin glowing softly under the lights. Her eyes were not metallic as Elias expected. They were a deep shade of violet, reflecting data streams and quiet thought. Her movements were precise, every gesture deliberate, as if calculated by equations he could never see. "Commander Elias Rane," she said softly, her voice like calm wind, "I thank you for accepting my presence. I am here to observe your ship's methods for conquered integration." "Welcome aboard the Valiant, Agent Valen," Elias replied, standing tall. "You'll find humans do things differently here." "I am aware," she said. "That is why I am here, to understand the difference." Her tone was flat, but something behind her words made Elias curious. Understanding humans? The Conquered never understood. They only judged. "Lieutenant Harper will show you to your quarters," he said politely. "You'll find the Valiant comfortable enough, though perhaps a little noisy." Saris inclined her head. "Noise is an inefficiency. I will adapt." As she left, Harper whispered, "She's going to hate this ship." Elias chuckled quietly. "Then she'll fit right in." Later that night, the ship drifted quietly through the void. Most of the crew slept. Elias couldn't. He sat in his private quarters, a small room filled with relics, a broken compass from old Earth, a faded photograph, a tiny wooden carving of a bird. Things that held no value to the Concord, but everything to him. A soft chime came from the door. "Enter," he said. Saris Valen stepped in. She looked uncertain, which was strange for someone from her species. "I was told you were awake." "I usually am," Elias said, motioning toward a chair. "Can't sleep when the ship's thinking." She tilted her head. "Ships do not think," he smiled faintly. "Ours do. You just have to listen." Saris sat, her posture perfect. "Your crew behaves unpredictably. They speak freely to superiors. They question orders. Yet your missions succeed. How do you maintain order without control?" "By trust," Elias said simply. "Humans don't follow because they must. They follow because they believe." She blinked, processing the words. "Belief is not logical." "No," he agreed. "But it's powerful." Silence filled the room for a long moment. Outside, the stars drifted slowly past. Saris's eyes flicked toward a small photograph on the desk, a woman smiling beside a younger Elias. "Someone you lost?" she asked quietly. "Yes," he said after a pause. "A long time ago." Saris did not press further. Her kind rarely spoke of loss. They didn't even have a word for grief. But she found herself wondering, what would it feel like to care so deeply that absence could hurt? When she stood to leave, she said, "You are different, Commander. You act without logic, yet there is a pattern I cannot define." Elias gave a small smile. Maybe that's what it means to be human. The next day, the Valiant received an emergency signal from the mining colony of Erebos 9. The message was fragmented, filled with static. "Attack the Concord drones. Civilians trapped. Coordinates." Harper looked up from the console. "Sir, that's Concord tech. Our allies are attacking human miners?" Elias frowned deeply. "Or someone's making it look that way." "Prepare the jump drive." Sarah stepped forward. "Commander, you cannot act without authorization. The Concord Council must investigate first." "By the time they do," Elias said sharply, "everyone there will be dead. That is not your responsibility. It is if they're human." Their eyes met. Logic against emotion, order against compassion. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, Sarah said softly, "You will risk your career, perhaps your life." Elias turned to his crew. "Plot the course. Engage jump in 60 seconds." The stars outside stretched into streaks of light as the Valiant jumped into hyperspace. Sarah stood silently, her heart, if she could call it that, feeling something she could not name. Why would anyone risk so much for strangers? Why did this human's defiance feel right? When the ship emerged, Erebos 9 filled the screen, the colony burning, the surface torn by explosions. Automated Concord drones were everywhere, firing on helpless miners. "Open comms," Elias ordered. "This is Commander Rain of the Human Star Service. All human civilians retreat to the Valiant's beacon zone." The drones turned toward the ship, locking on. Sarah stared in shock. "Those machines are Concord property. They should not fire on you." "Well," Elias said grimly, "they didn't get the memo." Missiles flashed across the darkness. The Valiant shook violently. "Shields at 40%. Harper shouted. Elias gritted his teeth. "Return fire." As human guns roared, Saris watched chaos unfold. Humans shouting, sparks flying, the bridge alive with noise and passion. It was madness. Yet somehow it worked. Orders moved like instinct, and every human fought not out of obedience, but out of will. In that storm of fire and fury, Saris saw something she had never seen before. Courage that defied logic. The Valiant's cannons destroyed the leading drone carrier, and the rest began to retreat. Smoke filled the air. Alarm screamed. Elias wiped blood from a cut on his forehead and smiled. "That's how humanity does diplomacy." Saris looked at him, her thoughts tangled. "You broke every law of the Concord." "Yeah," Elias said softly, staring at the burning colony below. "But we saved lives." She felt something stir inside, a flicker, small but growing. It was not logic. It was something else. Something human. The battle was over, but the silence that followed was heavier than the sound of explosions. The HSS Valiant drifted above the smoking ruins of Erebos 9, its hull scarred and its shields cracked. Inside engineers worked without rest. The air smelled of burnt circuits and determination. Commander Elias Rani stood at the center of the bridge, his uniform torn, his expression calm, but tired. He watched the colony's surface through the screen, a wasteland of collapsed towers and fire. Hundreds of miners were alive because of his crew, but hundreds more were not. He hated that feeling, the mix of victory and loss. To the conquered, it would be a simple calculation, casualties divided by success ratio. But to Elias, every number had a face. "Report," he said quietly. Lieutenant Harper glanced at the console. "Casualties minimal. Hull damage at 25%, but communication with Concord is gone. They're jamming our long-range signals." Elias nodded. "That means they know what we did." Behind him, Saris Valen stood silently. She had seen the battle with her own eyes, and her logical world was beginning to crack. The way the humans had fought, loud, messy, uncoordinated, yet somehow together, it haunted her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet. "You disobeyed a direct Concord law, Commander Rane. There will be punishment." Elias turned, his tone steady. "Let them come. I'll explain that saving innocent lives was worth breaking a rule." That argument will not satisfy the council, Saris said. Maybe not, he replied. But it'll satisfy me. She stared at him, trying to understand. You act on emotion again. You always choose feeling over logic. Does it not frighten you to live by such chaos? Elias smiled faintly. Feeling isn't chaos, Agent Valen. It's what makes life worth the trouble. Hours later, the crew rested. The ship's lights dimmed. The stars outside glowed faintly blue through the nebula's haze. Saris walked alone through the ship's corridors, her hands behind her back. She passed laughing engineers covered in grease, medics treating wounded, and officers sharing food in the mess hall. They were bruised, tired, but smiling. They had risked death, and somehow they were happy. She could not understand it. Her own people, the Altherians, were silent after victory. Their faces calm, their voices even. No one laughed. No one cried. Success was simply expected. But these humans, they felt victory. They lived it. When she reached the observation deck, Elias was already there. He stood before the stars, a mug of dark liquid in his hand. Coffee? He asked without looking back. Humans drink it when we're tired, or sad, or thinking. I do not require stimulants, she said softly. Neither do I, he replied with a small grin. But I like the taste. Reminds me I'm alive. She approached, her violet eyes reflecting the starlight. You risked your ship for people you did not know. I studied every record about you, Commander Rane. You were trained by the Concord Academy. You know their rules. Why do you break them? Elias took a sip and thought for a long time. Because rules are made to protect order, but sometimes they protect the wrong thing. She frowned slightly. Emotion clouds judgment. Maybe, he said, but it also gives us courage. Logic will tell you when to survive. Emotion tells you why. Saris looked away. For the first time in her life, she had no reply. Later, a soft alarm broke the quiet. The ship's AI reported, incoming signal from Concord Fleet. 3 vessels approaching. Estimated contact in 10 minutes. Harper's voice crackled through the intercom. Sir, it's them. Concord patrol ships. They're demanding we surrender for violating border law. Elias's jaw tightened. Of course they are. Saris's expression changed, not to anger, but to something like fear. If you resist, they will destroy you. You cannot fight the Concord, Commander. Their ships are newer, stronger. Elias looked at her calmly. You underestimate what humans can do when they're desperate. I do not wish to see more death, she said quietly. He smiled sadly. Neither do I. The Valiant faced the approaching Concord fleet. Their sleek silver ships glided closer, weapons armed, shields glowing. A voice echoed through the comms and cold, mechanical. Human vessel, you are charged with unauthorized combat and violation of Concord law. Power down your engines and prepare for boarding. Elias stood straight. This is Commander Rane of the Human Star Service. We responded to a distress call and saved civilians from rogue drones. We request open investigation. Investigation denied, the voice replied. You acted without approval. Surrender now or be neutralized. The bridge fell silent. The humans looked to their commander. The Concord ships were 3 times their size. Resistance meant suicide. Sarah stepped forward. Please, Elias, do not fight them. There is still a chance for peace. He looked at her. Really looked. For the first time, she said his name without rank, and it struck him harder than any weapon. I can't let them erase what we did, he said quietly. If we surrender, they'll call it a crime. If we stand, maybe someone will remember it was the right thing. He turned to Harper. Charge the plasma banks. All power to forward shields. Saris's voice trembled. You will die. Maybe, he said. But dying for what's right isn't the worst way to go. The bridge filled with tension as the Valiant turned to face the fleet head-on. The stars outside glimmered like 1,000 watching eyes. Moments before the battle began, Saris made a choice that would change everything. She stepped to the console beside Harper and touched the controls. Her neural implant connected instantly, her thoughts racing faster than light. Agent Valen, what are you doing? Elias asked sharply. I am saving you from yourself, she said calmly. There is another way. Her fingers danced across the console, her thoughts merging with the ship's computer. Within seconds, the Valiant's systems shifted. Frequencies scrambled, identification codes rewritten. Outside, the Concord ships suddenly hesitated. Their sensors no longer recognized the Valiant as human. or as anything at all. The Valiant became a ghost. Harper stared in disbelief. She's cloaking us? That's Concord tech. Elias's eyes widened. Saris, you'll be charged with treason. She looked at him, her voice steady but soft. Then we are both guilty now. The fleet fired, but the beams passed through empty space. The Valiant vanished into the nebula hidden by Saris's code. Inside, alarms faded. The crew breathed again. They had escaped death by seconds. Elias exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do that. I did, she said. Because you would have done it for someone else. He stared at her, not as an alien, but as a person. For the first time he saw warmth behind those violet eyes. Not logic. Not calculation. Something human. They hid within the nebula for hours, the ship drifting silently through clouds of blue light. Elias and Sarah sat in the control room alone. You saved us, he said quietly. But you lost your place in the Concord? She nodded. I broke their rules. I felt something. A pull I cannot explain. That's called caring, he said gently. She met his gaze. It feels heavy. Yet it feels right, he smiled. That's how it starts. They sat together in the dim light, the hum of the ship steady and calm. Sarah studied him. The small scars on his hands, the lines on his face, the tired eyes that still held fire. He was not perfect, not logical, but he was real. In her world, truth was measured by numbers. But here, sitting beside this flawed human, she began to believe there was another kind of truth, one that couldn't be calculated. Elias, she said softly, almost whispering. What will you do now? Find out who sent those drones, he replied, and show the galaxy what really happened. And if the Concord comes again? He looked out at the stars. Then humanity will remind them that we're still here, and we don't give up easily. Sarah smiled slightly, the first true smile of her life. Then I will stand with you. Far beyond the nebula, the Concord Council gathered, cold and silent. They watched the reports vanish from their records, erased by Saris's interference. One elder turned to another. The human has corrupted her. No, said the elder beside him. He has reminded her what she was meant to be. The nebula glowed like a slow fire around the HSS Valiant. For 3 long days the ship had hidden there, silent and dark, far from the eyes of the galactic Concord. Its engines whispered low, its crew worked quietly, and every man and woman waited for the order that would decide their fate. Commander Elias Rani stood before the wide window of the observation deck, watching colors swirl through space. Blue light moved like ocean waves brushing against the ship's hull. It was beautiful and lonely at once. He had not slept much since the battle at Erebos 9. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the colony burning, the faces of miners who had looked to the sky in hope. Saving them had felt right, but the Concord would never see it that way. To them, he was a criminal. Behind him, footsteps sounded softly. Saris Valen entered, her silver skin catching the glow of the nebula. She no longer wore the neat uniform of the Logic caste. Instead, she wore a simple jacket borrowed from the crew. It did not fit perfectly, but it made her look more alive. You still have not rested, she said quietly. Neither have you, Elias replied, turning toward her with a faint smile. I keep thinking about what comes next. She folded her hands. I have calculated every possible path. None end without conflict, Elias nodded. Then we'll face it. Saris looked at him for a long moment. The Concord Council knows you are alive. They will send a fleet. If they find us, they will destroy this ship. Then we can't let them find us, he said. We find them first, her brow furrowed. You intend to attack the Concord? Not with guns, he answered. With truth. In the ship's meeting room, the senior officers gathered. Maps and holograms glowed across the table. The Valiant's crew listened as Elias explained his plan. They would travel to Lyrian Prime, the center of the Concord's communication network. If they could broadcast proof that Concord drones had attacked human civilians, the whole galaxy would see it. The Council would have to answer. It's madness, Harper said, shaking his head. Lyrian Prime is guarded by half the fleet. Exactly, Elias replied. They'll never expect a single human ship to try it. Sarah studied the map. I can break their defense grid if I connect my neural system to your ship's core, but the process will destroy my link to the Concord network. I will lose my mind's connection to my people forever. Elias looked at her. You don't have to do that, she met his eyes. I already made my choice when I hid you in the nebula. The journey to Lyrian Prime was long and tense. The Valiant moved through dark systems, its engines running low to avoid detection. Outside, stars flashed like brief sparks of hope. Inside, something had changed between Elias and Saris. They talked often, not of war, but of simple things. Music, oceans, the smell of rain. She listened with quiet wonder as he told stories of Earth, a world she had only read about. When he spoke of the sea, she closed her eyes and imagined waves breaking against the shore. Once, late at night, she asked, "Do you ever regret being human? You could have joined the conquered fully, left behind your emotions," he laughed softly. "Without emotions, what would be left? Equations, orders? The universe already has enough of those. Someone has to remember how it feels to care." She smiled, small, fragile, but real. "Then I hope I remember too." When they reached the edge of the Lyrian system, alarms whispered across the bridge. Dozens of conquered ships surrounded the planet, shining like silver knives. Harper cursed under his breath. "That's their whole defense grid." Elias stayed calm. "Saris?" She closed her eyes. The thin blue lines of her neural circuit began to glow faintly beneath her skin. "I am connecting to their network now. You must hold position." Outside, the Valiant drifted among asteroids while invisible waves of code poured from Saris's mind. Her consciousness entered the conquered grid, endless streams of data, logic, and commands. Every thought felt like fire. Elias watched her, worry tightening his chest. "Saris, you don't have to push so hard," she didn't answer. Her breathing quickened. The lights flickered. Finally, the ship's computer spoke. "Defense barrier disabled. Window open for 90 seconds, Elias shouted. "Full power to engines. Take us in!" The Valiant burst from the asteroids, engines blazing. Enemy sensors screamed to life. Plasma fire streaked across the void. The ship shook violently, alarms echoing, but it kept moving, straight toward Lyrian Prime. Harper yelled, "Shields down to 40. Keep going," Elias ordered. Through the chaos, Saris forced herself to stay connected. Her voice trembled. "You must reach the central relay. Upload the proof." After that, the sentence cut off. Sparks flew from the console as her neural link overloaded. Elias rushed to her side. "Saris, I am..." "Fine," she whispered, though her hands shook. "Finish it." The Valiant broke through the final layer of defense and entered orbit above the shining city world. The surface was covered with towers of glass and light. Elias could see the great Concord spire where all data met. "Harper, target the spire's transmission hub," Elias said. "Prepare the upload." Moments later, the truth flooded the galaxy. Images of Arivos 9 appeared on every Concord channel. Burning mines, civilians running, drones marked with the Council's crest firing on humans. Voices across worlds began to question. Why would the Conquered attack its own allies? Elias watched the feed spread. His heart felt heavy but proud. They had done it. The truth was out, but victory came at a cost. The fleet around Lyrian Prime turned toward them in fury. Scores of ships locked weapons. Harper looked to his commander. "Sir, we're surrounded," Elias smiled faintly. "Then we make this last jump count." He turned to Saris, who sat weak and pale. "You've done enough. Rest now," she shook her head. "If we run, they will erase everything." "I can hold their systems for one more minute." "You'll die," he said. "So will you," she replied softly. "At least let it mean something." Their eyes met. No words could hold what passed between them. Respect, sorrow, and something deeper that neither logic nor language could explain. Elias reached out and took her hand. It was cool, trembling, and real. "Then we do this together." The final battle was like thunder in the stars. The Valiant charged headlong into the conquered fleet, its guns blazing bright against the endless dark. Every human aboard fought with everything they had. They knew they would not see home again, but they fought anyway. Inside the bridge, Saris kept the conquered systems jammed, her mind burning from the strain. Elias guided the ship straight toward the main command vessel. "If we take that out, they'll have to listen," he said. At the last moment, he opened the comms to broadcast across every channel. "This is Commander Elias Rane." His voice rang clear through the noise. "We are human. We make mistakes. We feel fear and love and pain. But those things make us strong. You can destroy this ship, but you can't erase what we are. The truth is already out there." He turned off the transmission and smiled at Saris. Time to go home, she whispered. Where is home? He looked at her softly. Right here. A flash of light filled the bridge as the Valiant's engines overloaded. The ship became a brilliant star against the black, its final burst spreading through the nebula like dawn. Days later, across hundreds of worlds, the conquered trembled. The proof could not be hidden. The Council's lies fell apart, and among both humans and aliens something new began to grow: respect. On a quiet memorial platform orbiting Earth, a small plaque was placed under a window of stars. Commander Elias Rane. He fought not for power, not for glory, but for what made us human. Agent Saris Valen. She saw the truth not with logic, but with her heart. Some say that when the night is clear, two lights still move together across the sky. One gold, one silver, side by side.